posted up on YouTube after. So if you do miss anything, or if I do go too quickly, you can review the video at a later time as well. I do have a tendency to speak quite quickly, so if you notice that, do feel free to slow me down if you feel that I'm missing out on certain things. The way I've designed today's workshop, I've left plenty of room for discussion. I'm actually quite excitingly writing a book on this topic. So I'm about 96 pages in. So this topic and this workshop today is just some of the key tidbits from the book where I think you'll get the most value out of today. So hopefully this will help you learn a bit about yourself. But if you are looking for different exercises, different tips and tricks, I'm happy to share more in detail as well. So just to give you a sense of the flow, we will go through with some quick intros. I like to open the floor up for introductions to hear from my audience as well. So there's 30 seconds. Now you can start to think about what you want to say in your introduction. You can pitch your business. You can talk about what you're working on. You can talk about any upcoming events that you have, or you can just simply talk about who you are and what you're doing. And then I'll jump right into the presentation. There'll be time for Q&A throughout, and then we will wrap up at 7:30 p.m. PST sharp. So it depends on where you're dialing in from. Great. Welcome, everyone. So some quick housekeeping. I love to hear from the crowd. I especially find with these type of topics where it's about self and personal discovery, there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all. Everyone has a different style. Everyone has a different personality. So different things will work for different people. So if you have found different tips and tricks, different exercises that work for you, do share it with the crowd. Another thing that I like to call out as well is if you find that someone is beating around the bush, not being honest with themselves, do call them out on that as well. And do please create a safe and welcoming environment for everyone. So if you hear anyone coming off mute, if the English is not their first language, I encourage you to be patient with them and just make sure that they feel welcome in the space. So let's get right to it. Community announcement. So this is the time for intros. Who wants to go first? Anyone can come off mute, or you can type it in the chat. It's probably quicker if you just come off mute and just introduce yourself.
Jim, I can start here just very quick.
Sure
So
thing.
we are here at the Global Startup School, and it's an honor for us to watch you, Jim. Thank you very much. We are in the hybrid model. Some people are watching you from their houses, and other people are watching you at the school.
Wonderful. Glad to have you all here.
Jim, I can start.
Anyone else want to go next?
Just to make sure that we are doing that because of COVID, we need to have like 2 meters space between each one, and that's right.
Yeah. Any of the students want to introduce themselves? Hi, Jillian.
Hello, my name's Jillian. I'm a working professional. I'm in Los Angeles, and I'm a new-ish mom to a toddler, and I've been working at the same company for over a decade and just turned 40. So this is part of my kind of just life evaluation at this point, and exploring different exercises like this and different outlets like this, and hoping to dig a little deeper into who I am and what I'm doing and make sure I'm on the right path.
Wonderful. Welcome,
right.
And congratulations to becoming a new mom.
Thank you.
I'm also a new dad. I have a 2-year-old.
Oh, perfect. I have a 16-month-old. We could swap toddler stuff.
Yeah. Great. Anyone else? All right. If nothing else, I think I can jump ahead with my introduction. So my name is Chin. I'm your host today, and I run this company called Classy Novel. What Classy Novel is doing right now is in the physical form, I do sales consulting and sales training. But the mission of my company and why I do what I do is because I want to help evolve education to incorporate more elements of soft skill development and personal discovery. So my goal is to really help people not just pick up hard skills that they can apply, but also learn more about some of the more intangible things like how to build your network, how to negotiate with people, how to discover your value. So I really enjoy the type of topics that I run for these type of workshops because it really fulfills that desire to not only help people pick up hard skills, but really help people learn more about themselves. So that's kind of what I do. My background and experience, I come from about 5 years in entrepreneurship and prior to that 5 years in corporate sales. So in the last 5 years, I was working for an incubator accelerator in Vancouver known as Spring. We would work with what we call social ventures. So these are businesses that are for profit, but also with some element of do good. So they do things like have solutions that speak to environmental causes, social justice, mental health, things like that. And I think what I want to share with you today is a little bit of some of the insights and lessons that I learned working with these social entrepreneurs. Because I find that these entrepreneurs are a bit different from the traditional business-minded people who are purely capitalistic and purely focused on opportunities. They tend to care a lot more about why they're doing what they do. And I think it really speaks in volumes because the way they run the business is completely different, and they tend to be a lot more fulfilled in what they do. So that's at least my observation with working with different type of businesses. So hopefully, I think some of the insights here, not only from the entrepreneurs, but also from my own personal journey through discovery, will help you learn a bit more about yourself. So key things and key areas of focus that I'll cover today. I will go a bit into understanding value-based versus rational decision-making. So I'll talk more about that later. We'll go through an exercise to help you uncover some of your personal core values. And then once we understand our baseline of what our values are, we will talk a bit about how to communicate and inspire people with your vision. And then we will wrap it up by talking about some action steps. How do you design a life plan to help you accomplish some of your visions after? So hopefully you'll get these core pieces out of today's workshop. But maybe let's begin with values. Why values? Why purpose? Why do you think values and purpose is important? I think that's more of a rhetoric question. Everyone thinks it's important. But I think that the main thing is, as human beings, we are born into this world, and the two most important days for us is, number one is the day that we breathe life into the world, and then the second is once we understand and learn what our purpose is. Once we know what we want to do in life, everything really aligns and has a lot more meaning. If you know that your goal in life is to improve education, everything you do in life tends to feel a lot more fulfilling. If you think about work, we probably spend more time at work than we do at home. Most of us spend more time with our coworkers than even with our family members, with our spouses, with our children. And the stats are quite obvious. People who are satisfied at work tend to be more engaged, tend to perform a lot better as well. Like I mentioned, you spend a lot of time at work. And if you're an entrepreneur, if you're thinking about starting something of your own, you might come to realize that success is not an overnight thing. The phenomenon that we tend to celebrate and elevate as the overnight or rags to riches type of entrepreneur is more a myth than it is reality. Most of the time, it typically takes at least 7.5 to about 10 years for most businesses to either get acquired, to be bought out, or to go public, right? So it takes a lot of time. So you better be working on something that you're passionate about, or else you will easily be discouraged by some of those obstacles that come your way. So just making sure that you really understand and work on things that you're passionate about. Profit, this was something that I learned when I was in the corporate world. One corporate trainer came in and talked to us about how we were setting the wrong goals. And I think the biggest takeaway that I got from that is a lot of people, especially in the business world, or not even in the business world, but if you're career oriented, you might think that profit or making more money is your purpose or is your goal. Profit tends to mean very different things to different people. So for example, if I am someone who cares about security, profit to me might mean that I get to have stable income, I get to provide for my family. On the flip side, if I care about freedom, profit could mean something completely different. It could mean that I have the freedom to do whatever I want to work on new projects. So profit can mean different things to different people. But at the end of the day, we should never make profit our main objective, because profit is usually the result of doing something great. So if your main purpose is, I want to be the best possible company with the best possible customer service, that will lead to good profits. Instead, you shouldn't focus on being the most profitable company at all costs, right? So just make sure that you never lead with profit. And it's been shown, like companies that lead with purpose tend to outperform companies that focus purely on profit. So let's jump to the value piece. The biggest piece that I learned over here is that when we are brought up, I'm not too sure how well this translates to North America because I was brought up in Malaysia, but I think it's quite common that I see a lot of people try to make decisions based on pros and cons. So when you're evaluating an option in front of you, you think, should I take this job or should I go with this other job? Or should I try to negotiate a promotion or should I not? Or should I take on this client or should I not? The first thing that you tend to default to is you tend to internally in your mind, or maybe even physically, you might write down, what are the pros and cons? What are the pros of working with this startup versus the cons of working with this startup? Or should I take a job at Amazon versus should I not? And that tends to be very logical, tends to be very natural for us. But what we don't realize is that my pros and cons are different from your pros and cons. And all of that actually really stems from values. So I want to talk a bit about value-based decision-making and go into that exercise that I mentioned. But know that as a start, because what you think is logical decision-making really stems from, number one, values, and a lot of the emotion that's attached behind what you see as some of the outcomes. So here's an example. So let's say if you are provided with two job offers. One job offer is to work for company A, another one is to work for company B. And company A is a startup, there's a high potential of reward, it's super exciting, you really are excited about what they're doing, but it's quite risky as well. They could go bankrupt at any moment, maybe they run out of money, cash flow, don't have enough clients. But as you know, with startups as well, there's not quite a fine line between work-life balance. You might be working all day, every day, and you have the ability to grow very quickly with the company. Versus job B, work for a corporate company, very big reputable company like Microsoft, secure income, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 work life, and very stable role. So I'm curious to hear from the crowd, how many people would prefer to work at company A and how many people would prefer to work at company B? No right or wrong answer. You can just type it in chat. So Omar says B, Talia says A. Jillian at this point B, Isaac A. Yeah, so you can see decision is quite split. It really depends on different people and what they care about. So Andre said, I did B already, so I want to try A now. So that's an interesting comment. And Andre, if you can remind me to circle back on your comment, I want to talk a bit about that after I go through the exercise. So let's say this is John. Let's say this person, his name is John, and he cares about family, health, security, and growth. You can quite readily imagine that John would probably prefer company B because his top two values are family and health. Sure, it does not, job B might not actually speak to security and growth as well. Sorry, actually it will speak to security, but maybe not so much with growth because he's not learning as much, he's not being promoted as frequently, but it's speaking to his top three values. He has more of a regular routine. He's able to spend more time with family. He can spend, the weekends or evenings after work to work out at the gym. So it's speaking to more of his core values. He will actually likely find more fulfillment with job B. So actually, just to circle back on Andre's comment, saying that you've tried B and now you want to try A, one thing to be very mindful about is you don't want to try things just for the sake of trying them. It is good to try things if you don't know what your values are and you just want to discover the different experiences. But do know that companies, when they're evaluating you, when they're interviewing you, they're also actively trying to do this thing where they're screening for your values as well. And as someone who has actually consulted with HR on my end, one thing that I actually typically caution with companies is that you want to avoid hiring people that are here for an experience. Because let's say if you tell a company or a hiring manager that, hey, I've worked with a corporate company and now I want to try working in a startup, that's actually a red flag for them. Because for them, they think that you're just here to try it out. And if the experience does not match your expectation, that you'll actually leave and you don't really care about their mission or their values. So just make sure that, if you're in that position where you're communicating with them why you want to join them, that you're actually communicating the right way and telling them that you actually care about their values. Hopefully, of course, you're also finding a company that aligns with your values. Make sense? So let's jump into the exercise that I talk about. So this exercise actually comes from Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within. Tony Robbins is a great author. I love his books. I'm not a big fan of his presentations and videos. I think too much rah-rah, but I think the exercise itself is a great exercise. So this is how the exercise goes. To start, I want you to list down 10 words or 10 values that really speak to you. So it can be any of these values listed up here, or it can be anything that is not as well. So if it's something that's not, feel free to write it down yourself. But here are some examples, right? It could be freedom, security, wonder, adventure, intimacy, control, education. So what are some values that really speak to you? So I'll give you about 5 minutes to do this. Just reflect, think about what are 10 things that you care about. Right, perhaps another minute. And don't worry, I won't make you actually share your values out loud. These are personal to you, but just think about what are 10 things that you care about, 10 things that really speak to you. All right. So as you look at some of these values, the first thing that I want you to reflect on is, you don't have to do this right now, but if you have the time, evaluate if some of those core values are actually base values or what Tony calls means to accomplishing something. So for example, like he mentioned money, some people might think that money is a core value, but money can mean different things to different people, right? Like if you value security, money means something very, very different. Or if you value freedom, money could mean something else. So just reflect, is that a core value or is there something else behind that, right? If you do something like, let's say you care about family, family could also mean different things to different people. It could mean a sense of belonging for someone. It could mean, a sense of love for someone else. So it might seem like a base value, but just challenge yourself and really look at those values to see if there's anything else underlying that as well. So why this exercise goes the way it is, and I'll talk about step 2, is what you want to do now is the next step is to actually rank the 10 items that you have. So try to rank them from a scale of 1 to 10. So you're not ranking each item on a scale of 1 to 10. You're just trying to score them so you know which is the number 1 value that you have versus the last value. And if you're struggling with prioritizing your values, what you can do is you can just take any 2 items on your list and compare them against each other. So let's say if you have freedom as one of your values, and let's say you have adventure as another value, which is more important to you, freedom or adventure? And then you'll start to see some values will float to the top. So maybe I'll give you another 2 minutes or so to go through this and try to rank your values. right, just a minute more. All right. So the reason why the exercise is as follows is because normally if someone just approaches you on the street and says, hey, what is your number one value, or what are the top three things that you care about? It's very difficult for us to just distill and say our whole life is tied down to these three things, or this is the number one thing that defines me. So by doing this exercise, it helps you kind of boil it down. So where I find it works best is if you look at your top three values. And some people might try to think that they encompass maybe even 5 or 6 values, but I find that typically our top three values are what define us in the current moment. Your values can change over time, but they do tend to be relatively static once you are past the age of, I'd say, about 15 or 16. And this is because we tend to build in certain beliefs about ourselves, and these values are kind of what defines us. So I like to start with values first, because I find that discovering your purpose itself, discovering your personal mission, is more of a journey. It's a bit more difficult to just say, hey, I really stand for evolving education, or I really stand for protecting the oceans, right? But values, they tend to be a bit easier to define because it really is all a factor of your upbringing and the things that you learn throughout your life. So they do change, but I find that they tend to be fairly static. Maybe every 5 years or so, I'll revise this exercise and change some of my values. Personally, when I did this exercise back in 2014, my top three values started as growth, contribution, and I think it was passion. It's evolved now to growth, contribution, and authenticity. So my third value has changed, but I find that relatively, they tend to be relatively static. So just do know that about your values as a starting point. If this hasn't been too helpful for you and you're still kind of struggling to figure out what your core values are, some other exercises you can try. So one I've heard is where you sit down with a partner, someone who knows you well, maybe your good friend or maybe your spouse, and you actually do this exercise with them, where you actually tell them what you see in them and they tell you what they see in you. Because sometimes we often don't even realize what we are really passionate about, and other people see it in us. Or we tend to deny it ourselves. So sometimes your partner can actually bring up some of those things and bring them up to you. So that's one other way you can do it. Another thing that you can try is, instead of, if you really struggle with figuring out what you care about, reflect on what grinds your gears. What are certain things that you are very passionate about that you are really against? Because if you are really against inequality, for example, then the opposite of that is likely one of your core values, right? So you tend to stand for certain things, and because other things don't reflect what you stand for, it creates a dissonance with you. And then you tend to actually feel that discord and feel very passionately about the topic. So that's another thing to reflect on. What grinds your gears? What are things that you hate? What are things that you find are really things that you can't stand for? So I'll kind of skip over this and I'll jump back. Effectively, what we have done as a starting point here is there's this concept in Japan known as ikigai. And the concept of ikigai means a reason for being. So what we've effectively gone through is trying to define what you love, the top segment over here. And the idea over here is, where you have things that intersect with what you love and what you're good at, that is your passion. What you're good at versus what you can be paid for is your profession, right? And what you can be paid for and what the world needs, that's your vocation. What you love versus what the world needs, that's your mission. So ideally, we want to try to land in that spot where everything intersects. So I'll kind of go through a few different exercises throughout this presentation to try to help you get closer to that middle point. So we talked about values. Other things to think about when we talk about what we love is you can do this at your own time. I won't actually have a pause over here, but reflect on what you're passionate about. So what are certain things that you find enjoyable? What do you love to do? What are some of your hobbies? They can be related to professional skills. They can also be softer skills. So some people really enjoy teaching. Some people enjoy analyzing data. Some people enjoy public speaking and presentations. So all of these things, they are related to professional work, but they might not be something that you define as your career. You might not say like, hey, I'm an engineer, but I also really enjoy teaching people. Therefore, I should be a teacher. It doesn't necessarily have to define your career, but it can be something that you're good at as well. Other things to just reflect on as well is, what do you believe? What do you believe about others? What do you believe about the people that you're helping? What do you believe about the problems that you enjoy solving, that you want to solve? And why do you think it's important to do some of the things that you want to do? So just reflect on that when you have some time. So let's look at the second portion here. So I love this quote by Albert Einstein: everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. Right? So we need to play to our strengths as well. So that's the second part. So there's this great exercise that I learned while I was working at Spring. It's called the Unique Genius exercise. And here's how it goes. There are 4 quadrants. What you want to do is you want to reflect on what is yours to do, what you have mastered, what you can do, and what is not meant for you to do. And I'll go through them in detail. So what's yours to do are things that you have superior skill in or are really passionate about. These are activities that really give you energy. When you're doing some of these things, you find that you're always energized. Without prompting, without people actually telling you to learn more, you actively go out and pursue skills in this area, right? And you feel that you can contribute to this specific area in many, many different ways. So these are things that fall under the category of yours to do. You've mastered are things that you do better than others. Interestingly, the category of you've mastered is also things that might have very closely been related to your career. You might have even built your entire career based on the skills that you have mastered. But despite being competent at these kind of things, these are things that you still have to actively work on, and there's some level of resistance because it's still not like the thing that you're super passionate about. So I'll give you one example over here. So personally, one of the skills that falls under my category of you've mastered is sales. I would like to think that I'm really good at sales. I've led sales teams. I've run many sales workshops. I actually do, for my living, sales coaching and consulting, right? So sales is something that I would say that is something that I've mastered. I can do quite well, but it's not something that I'm super passionate about. Education is something that I'm a lot more passionate about compared to sales. But sales is something that I would say I'm good at and has really defined who I am. So just kind of think about is it really something that is yours to do, or is it something that you've mastered? And then you can do other activities like, let's say, for example, for myself, it might be marketing, or it might be running events. These are things that if you do, you can meet minimum standards. They're pretty good, but there are definitely other people out there who do it better than you do. And these are things that you might find tedious and maybe sometimes boring as well. And if you're working on these things too long, you get restless as well. And then things that are not meant for you are just simply things that you really dislike doing, right? They could be like, for myself, I really hate analyzing data. I hate writing up reports. So what are things that are not meant for you? So I like to try to give you all some time to reflect on some of these things. Maybe we'll take about 5 minutes, reflect on some of these items. And same as before, they don't have to only be professional skills. They can also be things that are personal skills, right? They can be, maybe you enjoy helping people, or maybe you take a lot of energy from outdoor activities. So reflect on both professional but also personal skills that fall under these different categories. And if anyone has any questions, just feel free to type in chat and I'll try my best to answer them as well. right, I will move on. And do take the time to go back to this exercise if you haven't had the time to complete it. But I love to run it this way because I find that when we reflect on ourselves, I find a lot of people typically are challenged when it comes to being honest about their strengths and weaknesses. Nobody likes to look weak. People typically are afraid of sharing what their weaknesses are. So when you put it this way, people don't think about what are my strengths versus what are my weaknesses. It's just what are things that are not meant for me to do, right? Things that I'm just not passionate about. And if you are in any sort of working environment where you deal with a team as well, this is an exercise that you can share with your manager, or you can even run this exercise with your team as well. And it's very interesting because it'll give you a lot of insights on the gaps that you have within your organization. So when we ran this with Spring, we realized that we actually lacked someone who was super passionate about sales, and that informed our decision to hire someone who was sales focused. It also showed why the existing team actually worked very well with each other. So for example, I mentioned I don't really like looking at data, but there was something else on our team who was really super passionate about data and writing reports. So that's actually where you see some complementary skills come into play as well. So yeah, try this exercise, try it with your team, and just kind of reflect on it on your own as well. It helps you just better understand where you gain your energy from. So moving on, this is another thing to continue to reflect on if you have the time as well. You don't have to take the time to do it right now. But rephrased in another way, it's basically what are you good at? What are you not good at? What do you enjoy versus what you don't enjoy? Right? So hopefully, if you've given enough time to really reflect on that, we should have some clarity on what you're good at now. So at the very minimal, because you know what you love and what you're good at, you should be able to identify what your passion is. So the challenge then is, as you start to think about your purpose or your vision in life, you need to start to consider these other pieces. What can you be paid for? What does the world actually need as well? So let's try to address some of that. So vision, I think, is a very important thing to start trying to discover as soon as possible. Because if you don't know where you want to go, it's very difficult to decide where you want to, what you will do to get there. So this quote from Alice in Wonderland, I love it. Would you tell me please which way I ought to go from here? Asked Alice. And the cat says, that depends a great deal on where you want to get to, says the cat. And Alice says, I don't much care where. And the cat says, then it doesn't matter which way you go. Because in the cat's perspective, if you want to get somewhere, you just have to start moving. It doesn't matter which way you go, right? But if you care about a specific destination, you want to make sure that you're moving in the right direction. So that is really the idea behind understanding your vision. So what's your why? There's this great video. If any of you have not seen, I strongly recommend that you start there. It's called Start with the Why by Simon Sinek. Or the official title of the video is How Great Leaders Inspire Action. And in the video, Simon actually talks about the differences between some of the most inspiring companies and leaders. And the example he gives here is Apple. Why is Apple so innovative? What is Apple doing different? Apple, very much like many of the other different companies out there, it's just a computer company. They build technology. They have the same access to talent, the same products. They create computers. They create phones. They even have access to the same resources as well. So the same investors, same agencies, same media, same consultants. But what really sets them apart? What makes them different? And the insight that he has behind that is there's this thing called the golden circle. And the golden circle, what it means is great companies communicate from the inside out. They communicate with the why first. Many regular companies, they start from the outside in. And from the outside in, not only does it apply to companies, but it applies to any sort of organization or mission or cause that you're trying to create. So if you look at the outside in, most people know what they're doing. They might say, okay, I am providing consulting services, or okay, I'm creating a new MP3 player. So their what is very clear. Some organizations will know how they're doing it different. They might know how they're different from their competitors, what makes them unique. But sometimes if you ask them and you dig deep enough, why are you doing this? They don't really have a good answer. They're just like, hey, I thought it's something cool, something no one else is doing, or maybe I just want to make a lot of money with that. So not a lot of organizations tend to motivate with the why. But the most inspirational leaders and organizations communicate from the inside out. So the example that he gave with Apple is, imagine if Apple communicated this way. If they said, hey, we make great computers, do you want to buy one? Doesn't seem as motivating. But if they communicate from the inside out, if they say, everything we do, we believe in doing things differently. We want to challenge the status quo. We want to support people who are, those creative geniuses out there. How we do it is by designing beautiful products that are simple to use, user-friendly, so that these people can focus on accomplishing things rather than figuring out how to do things. What we create, we just so happen to create computers. Do you want to buy one? That sounds a lot more inspirational, right? So the first step to really understanding our purpose is to try to define our why. Because people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Like if you look at Apple, people don't buy just MP3 players or phones. They care about the mission behind it. They buy Apple because they want it to represent who they are, right? So that is kind of the starting point. The how is kind of your value proposition. It's just how you're different. And ideas that really stem from the why are the strongest ideas. And that's how you should start by defining your purpose. The why is also the biggest question that I get from a lot of people. When people ask me, hey Chin, how do I know if I'm doing the wrong thing? How do I know if I should give up? Maybe it's just a little bit more. If I try a little bit more, I'll hit that diamond wall there. Or maybe I'm knocking my head against a wall that will never break, right? How do I know if I'm just being too stubborn? And a nice way of thinking about it is, the analogy I like to use is a road trip. So if you imagine that your purpose in life is this destination that you want to go to. So for example, you say, okay, here I am right now. I'm starting in LA, like Jimin. And you say, okay, I want to drive to Vancouver in Canada. So that is your destination. That is your purpose, your mission. So if you know where you want to go, that is your vision. And as you start driving on this road trip, you might come across roadblocks. Maybe someone's doing construction on the road, or maybe there's traffic. So these roadblocks are different challenges that you have. So the challenge then is, when you see these roadblocks, do you turn around and drive back to LA? Do you give up? Or do you find a way around the roadblock, right? If you take a detour, that detour in business terms is called a pivot. So you're finding a different manifestation or a different way to actually get to that same destination, but your destination still remains the same, right? You're not being distracted. You're not trying to drive to Vancouver and ending up in Alaska, right? You're not going off into a different direction. You're not changing your mission. Your mission is still the same. You're just finding a different way to get there. So a lot of us tend to get really caught up about what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. But once you really identify your mission, it makes it a lot easier to see why you're doing what you're doing and how your current activities really align with your mission. And if not, if you're going in the wrong direction, it allows you to course correct in the right way, so that you actually work on things that help contribute to your mission. Make sense there? So often the answer to that question there is, if you are changing, but if your final destination is still the same, technically you have never actually given up. You are still persevering. You're just finding different ways to solve the challenges that you face. Make sense? So that's why I think the purpose piece is so core, so important. Because you're not like, let's say, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're thinking about starting a company, you're not starting a mobile app company and then the next day changing to an AI company, and then the day after that changing to a AR VR company, and then after that switching to an automatic self-driving car company. Right? You're not just trying random stuff, throwing shit on the wall and seeing what sticks. You are pivoting the business, but you're still grounded in your mission and in the things that you learn. And just an illustration of that, vision versus current manifestation. Don't be too bogged down by your manifestation. Some of the great companies that you see today didn't actually start out that way. Samsung was originally a grocery store. Toyota actually started by building textile equipment. Nokia was a pulp mill. Nintendo started with playing cards, right? So things can evolve and change over time. But as long as you are really passionate about your vision, it will help you get there. It will help you, stay strong as you work towards these challenges. Maybe I'll take a quick pause here. Any questions so far before we kind of dive into more? moving on. So what I think is a useful exercise here is this exercise that actually comes from the business world. And this thing that you're looking at right here is called the double diamond methodology in design thinking. So you can look it up on Google. It's called double diamond design thinking. So I'll walk you through it just to help you understand it, but it's something that you can not only apply in the business sense, but you can also apply on your personal journey as well. So how it works is, I'll give you a business example, then I'll give you a personal example. So in a business example, when you're trying to create a solution, you typically start on the left side of the diamond. So the left diamond is about designing the right thing. So making sure that, let's say if you're trying to solve world hunger, is a mobile app the right solution or is it something else, right? Design the right item. And then once you know what you need to design, the right side of the pyramid is about designing it correctly. So if, yes, it is a mobile app, making sure that you're building it in such a way that is user-friendly, intuitive to use, things like that. So that's how the philosophy of this methodology works. So essentially you're starting on the left side where you don't know anything, you basically are open-minded, and you end up on the right side where you know exactly what you need to build. So the first half of the diamond is what they call the research phase. So in the research phase, what you are basically doing is you are actually keeping an open mind about what problems you want to solve. So in a business example here, let's say if you say that you want to help people eat healthy. So what you might think might be some problems around eating healthy might not be correct. So for example, you might say, I think people don't eat healthy right now because they can't afford organic food, or because they don't have the time to cook, or because they don't know different recipes, or maybe because they don't know what food is healthy, what is nutritious, things like that. So these are many different problems. So what you're doing when you're doing that discovery phase is you're doing both primary and secondary research. So primary research is when you're actually doing things like, actually I confuse between the two, but one or the other is, one is where you're doing online research, where you're actually just looking like, are these actual problems? And then the other is where you're actually going out, speaking to people and doing customer discovery or interviews, where you're trying to figure out, is that actually something that people actually say? And then the second phase now is, now you know what some of the problems are. Your goal then is to identify and define which problems you want to focus on. So for example, you go out, you interview people and they say, yes, these are all actually some of our problems. You might have certain strengths where you might say, you know what, we don't care about focusing on recipes. But because of what we know and have in our team, and because of your personal passion, you might say, okay, we will focus on helping people, let's say, understand how to purchase the right food and live on a budget. So it's more about the financial plus the shopping needs around food. So that's where you're synthesizing. You're kind of defining the themes that you want to address. And then now, theoretically, you're in the middle. So you've selected exactly which problem you want to solve now. So, okay, I'm focusing on solving these specific problems. The next step then is designing it right. So in the development phase, let's say you've selected and said, okay, I care about helping people understand how to shop for the right items at the right price. So you're now coming up with different ideas. You're not attaching yourself just to the app. So maybe it's an app. Maybe it's an app that actually shows you, all the discount food around your location that's all healthy and organic. But maybe it's something else. Maybe it's, let's say, a course or program where you teach people how to buy the right items at the right price at the right time, right? Or maybe it's a, concierge service where you create a special box that is delivered to people's houses and it's cheap and it has food that's healthy, but maybe these foods are what we call what was the word for it? Like unwanted foods, like not good looking, like maybe blemished and whatnot, but they're still good to eat. So for example, those are many different solutions you could create. So the idea here is you're ideating. You're coming up with different possible solutions. So now you're in the third quadrant, and you know what you're creating, what's the problem you're solving, and you have different ideas. Then the last phase is just to really refine and test all of those different solutions to see which solution solves the problem best. Make sense? So that's a business example. So that's kind of how you end up with designing the right solution. In a personal sense now, if you're going out trying to discover your purpose, you can also apply the same approach to your personal life. So let's say if you go out and you say, hey, you know what? So I'll use my personal example. So in my case, I said, hey, I want to try and change education. So that is my personal purpose. That's what I care about. That is my mission. And the first phase is research. So the first thing I need to do is go out and speak to people in education, speak to people related to education, to learn about what is the current existing problems related to education. Why is education not done the way I think it should be, right? What are some of the limitations around it? Is the marketplace looking for different things? So one example would be, through some of my research, I found out that education still focuses on hard skills because that is what the marketplace is looking for. When you look at how companies hire, the first thing that they ask is, do you qualify? Do you have a degree in this? Are you certified, right? So because companies care about that, universities and traditional education institutions will actually start by focusing on the hard skills. So that is, where you do your research. And then the defining stage then is where you actually say, okay, where do I want to focus my efforts and energies? There are many different possible problems. So as I went through this myself, when I was going through the define stage, I said, hey, maybe one thing that I can try and do is I'll address the marketplace first. So the first company that I started, actually not the first company, but the first manifestation of Classy Novel was back in 2018 in March. I said, hey, why don't I try to create a recruiting platform where companies can go up there and talk about their mission and focus on their values instead. And so, for example, you would go on the platform and you would search, I care about the environment, or I care about social justice. And it'll pull up a list of companies that speak to that mission or have those values. And then from there, you'll find out what roles they're hiring for and what skills they're looking for. So not saying that skills are not important, but just trying to position skills second and mission first. So I came up with that definition of like, hey, why don't I try to do that? And then in developing, I started to ideate. So in the ideation phase, I said, hey, if I'm trying to test that out, why don't I test by running a career fair? So career fair, instead of creating an app, is a more simple version of it. I get companies to come, they come on stage, they pitch, and they talk about why they're doing what they're doing. And I wanted to see if they were able to attract more qualified candidates that were a better match for them. So those were some of my assumptions. And then the delivery phase, I went out and tested that, and then I actually found that it wasn't the best solution. The companies say they care about mission and values, they care about hiring people that align with them, but when push comes to shove, when they're talking to candidates, they still tend to focus on hard skills. So I found that that assumption was invalidated. So that's kind of my personal example of how I walked through that. So then I've evolved my company since then, and now I've actually said, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to focus more on the education piece directly, where I'm going to work more with individuals and help them learn more about themselves. So that's kind of my personal journey, but you can take the same approach, right? Start by doing some research, going out, trying to figure out like, what some of the problems I believe need solving? Are they the correct problems? What are the underlying causes behind that, right? So for example, if you say, I care about ocean conservation, what are some of the underlying causes that you want to address? Maybe you want to address what they call ghost equipment. So ghost equipment are basically like fishing nets or fishing lines or just anything that goes into the ocean that is lost, that is not recorded. So maybe that's what you want to address, or maybe you want to address something else. Maybe you address, let's say, pollution that's going into the ocean, right? Output from factories. So maybe those are different things that you want to define as the problem. And then you're actually trying to go down there and decide which problem you want to focus on, and then come up with different solutions, and then focus on implementing and testing which solution is the best solution to the problem. So a bit long-winded, but I hope you kind of get the concept of this. And if not, just review the video, or happy to chat more about that as well. Any questions, any comments before I jump to the next portion? Remember, no stupid questions. If you have a question, someone else probably has a question as well. If you are going through a career consideration, so let's say if you're not trying to start something new, here's another way you can try it as well. So for example, you might say, I care about environment. So you're going to interview people who are in roles or in companies, working for companies that speak to those values or mission that you have. So that's kind of how you do your research. And then the development phase is you might say, okay, I think this might be my career path. So I might go into, let's say, a corporate social responsibility, or I might start in a marketing role, and then you go out and then you try to validate that. You interview people and you say, is that a viable career path? Is that how I could get into the company that I'm working at? How did you get into your role, right? So that's, you're trying to go through the same kind of research and testing to figure out if that's the possible way to get to where you want to go. Great. So ideally, if you've had the time to really reflect on some of those things, you should hopefully land on a point where you understand, what you can be paid for and what the world needs. So hopefully, after all of this, we should be able to get closer to the middle of what is our ikigai, right? I often get the question, like, people asking me, should I be an entrepreneur or should I, work for a company? And my answer to that is it really depends. It depends on, number one, what you have available to you as current resources. Of course, some people just don't have the time and money to actually quit their full-time job and take that risk to be an entrepreneur. But also, I often like to believe that you shouldn't reinvent the wheel. If someone else is working on your mission as well, why not contribute to helping them versus trying to set something on your own all by yourself, right? So if you can find a company that aligns with your values, then start there. You only want to switch and try to do something on your own if they're really not doing it the way that you think it should be done. Make sense? So if you work for a company and you realize that they say they care about this, but what they're doing doesn't actually reflect their intended values, then maybe that's the time for you to change. Maybe it's a different company, or maybe it's starting something of your own. Cool. So I'd love to hear from all of you. Like I mentioned, everyone has something different. What have you found that has worked in your life to help you get closer to understanding yourself, your personal values, and what you're passionate about, what your purpose is? Anyone want to share? Oh, I have a quiet crowd today. Always happens with students, but one concept I think I want to lightly float by all of you is a lot of us tend to have this thing called imposter syndrome. And it's often what actually prevents a lot of us from speaking up. So I encourage you to really reflect and look it up, because the imposter syndrome actually holds a lot of us from contributing, not only to helping others, but also to just helping develop ourselves as well. So what the imposter syndrome is basically we feel like we don't know enough, therefore we don't want to share because we are worried that people will think we are worried that it will make us look bad in the eyes of other people. And the reason that exists is because we often don't vocalize some of the challenges that we go through in life. So it's kind of like, when you, as a professor, or let's say as a guest speaker, when asked a question like, who has a question, and no one wants to raise their hand, because everyone's worried that if they ask a question, they will look stupid, but everyone has the same question, but no one's actually asking it. So that's basically an example of a manifestation of the imposter syndrome. So if you have a question, don't be shy. Other people definitely have the same question, so feel free to raise it as well.
So I can share something, Tim.
Yes.
We were selecting one student here to talk. Yeah. And she will talk, but firstly, I will talk to encourage her.
Sure.
Okay? So, yeah, it's funny. I'm going to put her in the camera right now. Cynthia, now you are in the camera. See, so in my personal life, something that's helped me to know what I want to do, but not what I did not want to do. When my father passed away when I was 15, so I went through like a chemistry school, and I realized that I did not like chemistry at all. But as this school was so good and it was free, I had to continue studying there until I went to the university. So this was like a time in my life where I learned that I did not like chemistry, but I had to go through this. And I learned a lot because I studied with a lot of people that they had like a different lifestyle than mine. And that was quite important for me to forge my life and my character nowadays.
Great, thanks for sharing. If I were to try to distill that, I think one thing to pay attention to as well is mindfulness. So we can't often change things if we first don't realize, what we enjoy or what we don't enjoy. So like that example that you gave is actually just going through that experience and being mindful that, hey, chemistry is not something that I'm passionate about. Or what are some other things that speak more to me? So that is the first step to changing. I believe it's really building that awareness. It's hard for you to make a change if you're not aware that you have a problem, right? Or if you're not aware that you're not doing something that you're super excited about.
But if I don't, I have to go.
Yeah, because she's far from the microphone.
Here? No, like here?
Hello.
He can listen you.
Hi. Hi, I'm Cynthia, and yeah. Okay, so I'm not so sure what to share, but I think like one thing that helped me to like why I'm here and what I was trying to do here. Why am I here is because back in my hometown, I think like sometimes you take decisions and you don't actually know, like sometimes some things frustrate you. You're not like feeling like as accomplished as I think you should feel when you take a decision. So you go like do like a step backward, and that's why like I think a good a good suggestion for everyone when I start traveling and seeing things from another perspective helped me as well to know what I really wanted to do in my life, because people tell you to do certain things certain way, and then you go to other places and then you discover a whole new world of people like who thinks different from you and can give you ideas and can also make you think like a different way of what you want to accomplish. And that's why like I came here, and like because like I came to Canada and discovered like there's a whole new world to discover, and that's why like it changed my perspective on my objective. So yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. And sorry for putting you on the big screen, but yeah, I really love that perspective. And I feel that travel definitely does open up our eyes. Also coming from Asia myself, I find that a lot of entrepreneurs, when I've worked with entrepreneurs in Asia, like I recently did some work in Vietnam, a lot of them tend to look to the West for inspiration and feel like everything the Western culture is doing is the best way of doing it. But they also have certain values and certain ways that they run their businesses that we have a lot to learn from over here as well. So not to say that there's only one right way of doing things. There's many different ways of doing things. So thanks for sharing that.
And that's quite interesting to understand how is the Asian way to learn and to teach also. This is something that we are interested in.
Cool. Anyone else have anything that they want to share about how they've figured out their own personal life? Not saying that everyone has their life figured out. I personally am still on a journey of learning as well. But if you have felt that you've come closer to understanding yourself, if you want to share something about it, then feel free to come up mute. Hi, Ling. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, hi, Chen. When I was young, I always tried to follow the path of people who do well on the career or the business. So if my friend is doing well as a trader on stock or forest, then I will try to follow the path and try to learn, you know, the skill to be a trader. And then I realized then I will always fail and fail and fail, because I realized that I wasn't given the gift as a trader. I don't have that talent to be a successful trader, because when you have the gift, you can see the chart and you can pretty much have the intuition, knowing that the stock is going up or down or going in a channel that, you know, not moving. So when I just did not have that gift, when I even tried to work really hard and learn the skill, and I would still fail. And then I realized that I just have to, instead of follow other successful people path, I just have to find out what gift I have, what talent I was given by my through the DNA of my parents, or by the universe or God-given gift. You know, look at Michael Jackson. He is such a talented performer, as a singer, as a dancer. If he tried to be a Wall Street trader, he would not be successful. But he was on the right path to develop that skill, that talent as a performer, and he achieved huge success. So when I realized that, you know, that was the thing that I failed on my career over and over again. I tried to learn, I went to so many events, took so many classes, and I realized that I just have to find out my God-given gift, or the DNA, the best DNA, that the talent that my parents passed on to me. And then I realized I'm very imaginative. I have the gift of a story creator, movie story creator, that I should just focus my path. I should focus my effort to be on that path, to create a outstanding story for a movie or for a book. That will give me much more a chance of success, because then I can do this faster and better than everyone else. I can be the person that can create an imaginative movie more so than most people in the world. So that is my lesson or aha moment, when I realized that I just focus. You know, I try to study the craft of a movie story creator. I study them. I study how they put a story together. What's the twist and turn? I learn from the masters. And then now I'm working on my own movie story. And I want to promote, launch it to Hollywood. I think only when you can find out your God-given gift, then you can work towards on that path, and then you can dream big, because then you can do something that most people cannot do. Then you can feel that you have a chance to achieve something big. Otherwise, then you will never be, you'll be just always like be a B achiever instead of A achiever. That's how I feel.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Totally agree with that. That's why one of the exercises we mentioned is to play to your strengths, right? So thanks for mentioning that. A few things I want to highlight in some of your comments there, just to make sure that people don't read it the wrong way as well. Number one is learning from others who are successful. So by all means, I believe that you don't have to reinvent the wheel for everything, right? So if there are mentors out there who are great, who are successful, do learn from them. But of course, exactly like Ning mentioned, you want to learn the right things that will contribute to your mission, as opposed to just learning from anyone who is the best, just because you see them as successful, because how they define success, or at least what you perceive as success in them, might not mean this type of success that you actually want to get. So just making sure that you start with that. Manifestation is another big one that I want to hone in on. So Ling was talking about, like, for example, Michael Jackson, right? If Michael Jackson did something else, he might not have been as successful. But I say, don't just focus on purely on the skills. Some people will have more talent than others. It does not mean that if you have no talent that you cannot do something well. Of course, people who have talent do have a leg up above you. But the idea is, let's say, for example, if your personal cause is to end racial inequality, you could do it in many different ways. So one way you could do it is to be a politician if you're really good at politics, right? Another way you could do it is to be a documentary maker if you're really good at, like Ling mentioned, storytelling and spreading awareness. Or you could do it in other different ways as well. You could become a police officer. You could, be a lawmaker. So there are many, many different ways to accomplish the same mission. And the idea is where you're playing to your strengths is where you are focusing on the manifestation. Make sense? So you are taking that path, that manifestation that really applies best to your strength, but you're still going towards the same destination. And that's where, that's why I think you should start with defining your purpose.
Yes, I think you just have to do a soul searching that your heart or your intuition will guide you on the right path. Yeah, you're right. Some people may not have a gift to be a great chef, and then through a lot of hard work and experiment and training, become a great chef. It doesn't have to. Yeah, you're right on the manifestation that you when you realize that's your path, that's your purpose, that's your mission, then the path will be that's your path, then it will be revealed to you, and you just follow your heart and your soul onto that path of manifestation.
Yeah. Maybe I'll give one last insight, then I'll move on. Myself, one thing that I noticed when I kind of discovered my personal mission is, like I mentioned before, I don't like to look at data and analyze things. That's something that I really hate doing. When I was working for companies, I really hate writing reports. But what I noticed is when I'm running my own company now, I actually enjoy the process of looking at some of the data and analyzing the trends. That's because I know that when I'm doing this analysis, it helps me better understand my audience, helps me better understand how to speak to them, how to give them value. So when you are working on something that you are passionate about, when you're working on your purpose, the things that you have to do become less tedious, and they just become things that really align better with your mission, and you take more joy out of it as well. So just do keep that in mind. That's maybe one of the signs that Ling mentioned, where you kind of follow your heart and you start to realize that, hey, you know what, maybe I'm on the right path. Cool. So maybe just to sum it all up for today's session, hopefully, start by defining what you love, what are some of your values, what you care about, what's your manifestation, how do you want to do it, and then you look at what you're good at as well, skills that you're good at, things that you're passionate about, things that you get excited about, and then lastly, just analyzing what does the world need and what you can be paid for as well. So that's really the essence of this presentation. And remember, like I mentioned, do be patient. Sometimes finding out your purpose is a journey. It's not something that happens overnight. So it is a bit overused, but try as many things as you can. Sometimes you don't know what you enjoy versus what you don't enjoy unless you start to try doing different things. But as you test these different things now, just be mindful about how it makes you feel and how it reflects in these different quadrants as well. So yeah, that's basically it for today's presentation. Some upcoming workshops, and just to wrap it up, I do have some coming up. There's one tomorrow on non-manipulative sales techniques for entrepreneurs. Next week, we have Charlene Fothergill from CTO.ai. She's the head of HR, and she's coming in to talking about how to negotiate a raise or get a promotion. We have one on list building and sales automation. We have another one on September 9 on writing sales emails. So yeah, if you want a full list, you can visit the Eventbrite page. And that's basically it for the presentation. We can chat if you have any questions. And I think Raphael wants me to make a quick announcement to the students, but otherwise, any questions, any comments, this is kind of time to put it up. And if anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, I will put my LinkedIn profile up as well. Oh, no questions? Raphael, do you want me to talk about the hackathon right now?
Hi, Tim.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Great.
Yeah.
So I think, Jillian, you can probably jump off if you need to. This is more specific for Canada. So it's a Canadian challenge. But yeah, everyone else, if you are in Canada, then you can hang around for a bit. I'm just going to post my LinkedIn in the chat. So if anyone has any questions or wants to connect, feel free to message me on LinkedIn. There you go. But this is the book that I mentioned from Tony Robbins. And that's basically it. But I'll just switch over. So I mentioned I'm actually organizing a hackathon coming up in October. And for those of you who are not familiar with what a hackathon is basically typically a weekend-long challenge where people get together. Sometimes it's entrepreneurs, sometimes it's developers, and then you also get some designers in the room as well. And the idea is you come to the event, you pitch your ideas, and you find a team to work on your ideas together. And over the weekend, you try to actually build a business. And at the end of the weekend, you pitch to the judges. The judges are usually mentors, investors, subject matter experts, and usually there's a winning team. I'm doing this challenge, and I'm trying to do it a bit differently. So I'm actually making it a week long instead of a weekend. And some of the logic behind that is by making it a week long, it gives the team two things. One is they get more time to go out and do what we call problem validation. So they can actually speak to customers, figure out if the problem they're trying to solve is a real problem, and design more relevant solutions. And then number two, what I'm really hoping that a lot of teams will get out of this is, number one, they'll either build closer relationship with the companies and become hired by the companies, or number two, these companies that they work with on validating the problems will become their first customers. So I'm hoping that more real companies will come out of the hackathon. So if you have any ideas, if you want to try starting a startup, this challenge is for you. There is a team and focus. Because of COVID, the team and focus is around retail. So retail includes anything that's related to having a physical space. So education is considered retail as well because you have a physical location. Transportation is retail as well. Vending machines are retail as well. So that's basically what the hackathon is. It's going to happen on October 3rd. And I'll quickly show you the schedule as well. So October 3rd, so there's a full weekend. There's a bunch of workshops. You pitch your ideas, you form teams, and then you go through a bunch of workshops. And then throughout the week, you do customer validation, you design your product, you build the product. And then on the last weekend, a few other workshops, wrapping up some of the more business side of things, pitching, storytelling, and then you present your solution to the judges. And then they give you feedback. So that's basically what the competition is like. So yeah, for regular participation is $40. Students are $20, but Tamwood they get it I think $15.
So great, Tim. Can you talk a little bit more about like the schedule? Because when I asked you about that, I would like them to understand deeply what are the opportunities that they can get out of this hackathon.
Yeah,
what are the companies that you have partnering with you, that they can learn from these companies, that they can get like opportunities out of those companies, how it's going to be the networking on that events, all those kinds of things.
Yeah,
I quite believe that that's the better side of hackathon.
Yep.
And of course, it's going to be different.
Yep.
But I'm sure that with your skills, you're going to make it worth it as if it was in person.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Each person will have a different objective going into a hackathon, but the three main reasons why people join hackathons, and I personally participated in a few myself. Number one is if you're looking to get hired by a company, this is a really good opportunity to really showcase your skills and impress whoever is related to the company in the hackathon. Number two is if you want to start a company, this is also a good opportunity for you to, number one, test your idea, but number two, find team members for your company, find co-founders for your company as well. So that's another reason why you might want to join it. And then number three is if you just want to build your network. So personally, when I participate in some of the past hackathons, I still keep in communication with a lot of people who were in my team or in other teams. And I've gotten a lot of value out of that in different ways as well. So those are the main reasons. Sorry, is someone trying to say something, or I'm not sure if I'm getting feedback?
Yeah, do you want to ask something? I have to work.
Cool. In terms of the schedule and what companies are participating, the first day is you start with networking, you get to know the people, then you pitch your ideas. The way I'm doing it is very much like Techstars, how they do Startup Weekend. So you have 60 seconds to pitch your ideas, and then people will vote on ideas. They will form teams and recruit team members. And then you take a break, and then we come back, we talk about design thinking. You go for lunch, we come back, we talk about how to do customer discovery and validation. And then we introduce the mentors on Sunday. And then we talk about how to use the mentors. And then we go more into talking about how to analyze results from customer discovery. And then over the week, they continue to do research. They're talking to customers, finding customers, building your product. And then the next week, we talk a bit more about product design. So MVPs, how to validate different ideas. We talk more about the business model, you know, how you want to structure revenue, how you want to look at competitors, how you want to be different. And then we wrap up with, on Sunday, pitching and storytelling. So how will you do your presentation? And then there's some time for all the teams to work on their pitch, and then they pitch to a feedback panel. So that is the competition. The current idea is that this is only phase one. So there will be winners, there will be top 3 in this competition, but any team that wants to continue with the idea can move on to phase 2. So phase 2, there's no additional participation fee for it, but the idea here is we will go more into how to do sales, how to do marketing, how to do fundraising, financial planning, things like that. So it is basically like a small mini business course. We have mentors. So some of these mentors are mentors that we work with at Spring. Paul, who teaches at Hamwood, is also one of the mentors. We have currently Nada Work Life, which is a co-working space, YVR Prep, which is a commissary kitchen, Growing City. I'm speaking to WeWork tomorrow as well. So there are more and more companies that are coming on board as well. Yeah. So that's basically it.
I have the dates, I'm not sure. You can ask that.
No, it's okay. I got it.
You want to talk more? Do it.
No.
Oh, now they are listening us.
We are.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, no.
Sorry, we thought we were muted.
No. Yeah, any questions, any comments?
Yeah.
No, good.
No, Cynthia was asking you about like the dates, that sort of things. She was really happy with the price that we have now from $20 to $15. And she's asking about the dates, how it's going to work, like that sort of.
Yeah, you should still be able to participate if you're a full-time student. So you can see it's a weekend long. So Saturday, Sunday is pretty much the full Saturday, Sunday. And then the week is mostly for the team to work on their own time. So most teams can communicate after their work hours or after school, and then it's another weekend. So if you notice that the actual components for participation, the workshop, they usually end at about 3 o'clock. So teams can work on their own time after that as well. So it's kind of like a half day each weekend, and then on the week you just work on your own time. So you can do it if you're a full-time student as well.
Thank you.
May I ask you something?
Yeah.
When in the first day, when you said that at 10:45 you vote the ideas,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, if I have no vote or I don't know, my idea is not so good, what should I do there?
Good question. So this format is what I took from Startup Weekend, but if you are able to recruit team members, even if your idea is not voted, you can still form a team. But to form a team, you need a minimum of at least, I think, 5 people. So it depends on how many people are participating as well. So really depends on how many ideas, how many people pitch, and how many people are actually participating in the hackathon.
Okay, thank you.
So, Chin, like the people should come with the team already done.
They don't have to. They can form a team there,
Oh,
but they can also come with a
team there.
Yeah, if they have a team, they can also come with the team. But my encouragement is to go there and listen to the pitches, because sometimes you might say, hey, you know what? That sounds like a really interesting idea. I want to work on that, right? So even if you are pitching an idea, if your idea is not selected, but if you hear another idea that you really want to join, you can also join the team. Yeah.
Great. What are the companies you are partnering for that? Sorry, I missed that.
Currently, I have 4 that have confirmed. I'm still reaching out to more. So Nada is the zero waste grocery store on Broadway and Fraser.
Nice.
Work Life is a co-working space. They are close to Nanaimo, I think. No, sorry. VCC Clark, around that area. YVR Prep, Commissary Kitchen, and then Growing City, which does recycling and waste management. And I'm talking to WeWork tomorrow, so hopefully they'll come aboard as well.
Yeah. Yeah, very nice. Yeah, very nice. I'm gonna do a speech for the Brazilian consulate.
Sure.
With a company in VR.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can do some connections afterwards.
Yeah, I'd say as long as the company has anything that is physical location, then they can benefit from this solution. Because I'm hoping that ideas that people will pitch will be related to, either like digitizing their business, how to move things online, e-commerce, or maybe ideas that are related to how to have better hybrid solutions where you have in-person learning, but also online learning. Yeah, anything related to physical locations. Better, safer workplaces, yeah.
Great, Chin. Thank you very much.
Great. I think otherwise, that's basically it. Everyone else, have a good night. Rafael, did you want me to stay a bit after?
Guys, we are sorry, can I speak with them in your meeting?
Sure,
like
sure.
1 minute only.
Yeah.
No, we are going to have a break. And at 8:10, we come back in our breakout room. Is that okay?